So every day that we have guests come in, we have a really quick couple sentence. We explain to people what's gotten us banned before and what YouTube's rules are. YouTube's rules are you can't claim that there's fraud in elections. It's nebulous because sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So I don't know. These aren't our rules, they're YouTube's. Don't directly insult and attack people. Like, don't call someone a fucking retard. And so,
what kind of a world is that to live in? Nobody wants to live in that world. When they present you with people and things that are obscene, and then deny you the right to call them what they are, it's an abusive relationship.
Well, here's the issue I take, and the way we try to do things. We try to be precise, and calling John Fetterman a retard feels good.
That sounds like fag shit. I don't like that. We try to be precise means I've picked an approved narrative.
No, it doesn't.
That they've provided for me.
No, it means
that I've got
I want
a kind
people
of
to understand exactly what something means.
Well,
saying John Fetterman's a retard doesn't explain that he's got severe brain damage. And it comes off as petty, so it's actually off-putting.
Who cares about being petty?
Do you want to win hearts and minds, or do you want to just scream into the wind?
I think I did a pretty good job my way. The thing you're assuming a very French attitude to the definition of things, which is not really in the Anglo tradition. France has a thing, the Académie Française, which is a government body that lays down the correct way to use things and what things mean.
And how to speak French.
Yeah. And they look down on Le Weekend. We've got a French way of doing that. In England and America, historically, we've taken the approach that language, that meaning is meaning, and language and the way that we define things should follow usage. So how people actually use the word, how people deploy it, and the function that words perform in the sentence, because that's what meaning is. It's the function that the word is performing in a grammatical construction. That should be the way that we understand what words mean.
Let me ask you.
So when somebody calls somebody else a retard, most people understand that they're implying some kind of mental shortcoming, that they're meaning to suggest that the person is not really all there upstairs, and that they might have one of a small clutch of things wrong with them.
Let me ask you something.
Nobody that uses retard refers to a 1950s DSM, a diagnostic statistical manual, for the precise kind of injury that we used to call retard. People call people retard because they're acting retarded.
Right. So let me ask you something. Do you think there are people who hate Trump?
Who hate Trump?
Yeah.
Sure.
A lot of them, right?
Sure.
Why do you think some of these people hate Trump?
Well, there's a variety of different people who hate Trump for different reasons. I mean, there are people who hate Trump because he's a threat to their stranglehold.
Do you think there are people who hate him because he speaks crudely?
Well, he won the election. I think if people did have reservations about some of his tweets, they grit their teeth and voted for him anyway. Because
some people did. And so what I ended up learning a lot from people, because I wasn't supporting Trump in 2016.
You've been neutered. They've spayed you.
Actually,
You've been gelded.
Substantially more successful.
If you operate within the rules of the beast system, then the beast system will allow you to exist.
I wonder.
That's not really a proof of the case.
I wonder how many individuals who voted for Trump voted for Trump in 2020, who didn't vote for him in 2016, did so. And I'm not saying this to say that I had a tremendous
because of mean
impact.
Words.
No,
Zero. No people.
That's not what I was going to say. That's not what I was going to say. You cut me off when you were wrong. I was going to say, I wonder how many regular people were willing to vote for Trump because I was willing to approach them in a way that meant something to them. And I'll give you a good example. We've had Steve Bannon on the show several times and Marjorie Taylor Greene on. And our viewers, many of them, maybe half or more, didn't know who she was and never heard her speak before. And they thought she was crazy. We had her on the show. And they said, wow, she's brilliant. I didn't know this. I had no idea. So there are people in this country who don't think the same way as you do in terms of calling someone a retard.
No, but I said earlier, everything in its right place. You're performing a necessary function at one end of this analysis, and I'm performing a different function at the opposite end. And you and I are actually very much at the opposite ends of the spectrum.
I agree with you.
Perhaps my approach is partly driven by some instincts that are less noble, like I get a kick out of it, or I'm perfectly happy to admit that shortcoming. But many more people are,
let me just say, I like your approach. I think the way you describe things is funny. And I think we are trying to use different tactics, but towards similar ends. Maybe not identically.
Close enough.
Close enough. And so my approach is...
Proud to call you an ally. We can fix the things you're not right about after the war is won.
Sure. There's a lot of people who hear you call Fetterman a retard, and they love it, and they clap, and it invigorates them. But there's also a lot of people, and I've met them, and that's why I said, maybe we need to create a separate space. Steven Crowder has his space, and he's very successful.
People say they don't like words, but their actions tell a different story. People say that they don't like abusive language. They say that they're offended. All this stuff is performative. It's not real. Their actions tell a different story. Their behavior tells a different story. And frankly, I think the extent to which people are shocked out of stupid. I mean,
then let me
people in this
approach.
country are asleep at the wheel with no true understanding of the catastrophe that they are about to face. And if they can't handle me saying retard, they can't fucking handle the future that's coming.
So let's take another approach.
I mean, maybe my approach is more heartlessly
no, I think your approach is
discriminatory between the wheat and the chaff, but I'm looking for champions. I don't care about audience size. I'm looking for heroes.
So let me say, I think your approach is fine, and I think there's a necessity in multiple approaches to similar goals. My question is,
I think my approach has a
you've been banned.
Proven track record of greater success.
Are you more effective without your platforms?
You don't stop being an icon. I have left a lasting mark internationally as a shorthand for resisting the system. I can't walk down, even today, the central thoroughfare in any foreign city without being asked for autographs. You don't give up that status, and
And I agree.
Some people acquire that through years of diligent work of a less attention-seeking. With a less attention-seeking approach. The best example of that I can think of is the recently departed Queen, whose life was dedicated to restraint and operating within in an unassuming and non-controversial way. And she was the most popular person in the world, uniquely loved. But my purpose is different. So
I see it.
I think we can grant each other that we are pulling towards largely similar goals with different strategies because we have different paths to the same place, and that all of these strategies are probably necessary, and together working harmoniously have a decent shot at making things better.
I see what you do as a kind of as infantry, direct, straight at it, on the front line. What we do is more espionage. We try to be. We try to be available. We try to be.
That was quite a bit of. That was quite a bit of flattery for yourself, there, wasn't it?
No,
you're the cannon fodder, and we're the intelligence agency.
Or saying you're fighting at the front line. You're not complimentary.
You're not getting away with that one.
Getting away. I thought it was complimentary to say you're actually on the front line and you suffered because of it, and we're hanging back and we're safe because of it. Look. We have a large show with a large platform, and we're able to reach a lot of people. You are particularly effective, and everyone on the show, we had 60,000 or some odd concurrent viewers. They were enthralled by what you had to say, 51 or 52,000. There are people who never heard you speak before who were lighting up saying, this man's brilliant, he understands us so well, and we've created a vehicle that you can come and have your voice reach these people, despite the fact that they've tried to silence you.
I know that there are strings attached to my approach, and I accepted the consequences of doing things the way that I did, knowing what would happen, right? And it goes before Trump, I pretty much single-handedly killed the whole rape culture on campus thing. I pretty much single-handedly killed the whole wage gap thing. You don't hear people talking about that anymore. They dropped it. Then there was Gamergate. Then there was Trump. I knew that a price would have to be paid for successes at that magnitude, that quickly, one after the other, and with the kind of obvious relish with which I was pushing every button at my reach and kicking open every door. So I accepted the consequences of that. Frankly, they let me hang around for a bit longer than they should have.
I think they'll bring you back.
I have, well, but I decided to take a dignified second chapter of more of a Lord Varys-esque kind of role for fans of Game of Thrones, where I do a lot of ghostwriting and advising and suggesting and connecting people who are afraid of each other but probably should be friends. So it's not possible really to estimate from where you sit what my influence may have been since cancellation. There are people who were cancelled who have staggered on trying to recapture relevancy, and I think that they have made themselves ill in the process. They have become retards.
How do you?
And I frankly, I just don't want to live like that. I am crippled with, I think, with a sort of poor impulse control. That I just know that there are environments in which I don't survive for long, and so you might say that I've shaped my strategies to match my personal shortcomings, but it is also separately to my own pleasure and weaknesses.
I think
it is also my analysis, my opinion, that there is a proven historical track record of far greater impact doing what I do. I might be wrong about that.
I think you handled yourself masterfully on the show by insulting people in a way that was extremely funny and more severe than just calling them.
Such harder work.
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm retired. I don't want to come up with these arch literary put-downs.
When you said,
I'm an old man.
The moist thing you accidentally touch was very, very good.
It was very good. Be a writer. Really.
Hey, technically, retarded, the definition by American Heritage Dictionary, affected with impaired intellectual development. Technically, John Fetterman has been retarded by the stroke.
Yeah, I know. Like I said.
That's what I've been saying.
Like I
today.
fucking said, he's a retard. Apologize.
Maybe he's healing.
As soon as I seen Tim today, I was like, the retard one. And I'm like, yeah, that's literally the first thing I said.
I mean, I could understand if I called somebody something that's just like way off, but he's a fucking retard.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just mad we didn't get our own retard. We didn't get Herschel. I thought we'd get our own, but
Over yet.
But we live in an unjust universe.
So you're not gay anymore.
How do you?
I would describe myself as living chastely. I'm celibate. I don't act on things. People who try to kind of start this process, about 1 in 5 of them will come out the other end and successfully have a relationship with a woman and children. I just became aware, it kind of crept up on me that it was. I was living a lie. I was living a disordered, existence that was not what I was. It's not the function that I was designed for. And they just one day I woke up and I was like, can't do it. So a combination of getting quite deeply into the Catholic faith of my childhood, and oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. My therapist. It's not really like that. It's not a $500 an hour woman whose job is to wreck marriages. This is somebody who helps you to understand how childhood experiences can produce disordered desires. And the etiology of homosexuality is most often some combination of a failure to form platonic friendships with other boys when you're young, lack of male role models, and sometimes abuse. What we know about homosexuality seems to bear this out. More people in Jewish and Black America describe themselves as LGBT. Why might that be? In the case of Black America, fatherlessness is the primary component, and I guess it's flippant to say, but in the case of the Jews, I think everybody who knows Jewish people know that Jewish marriages are kind of like lion taming. You have a quiet, unassuming, intellectual man and a wife that he's like struggling to handle. I think people are familiar with that dynamic, and that sort of overbearing, omnipresent mother can do some of this damage too. I came to realize that I was acting out to that my sexual appetites were a product of those early childhood problems, and that I would be happier and live better and be more in accordance with God's wishes and so on and so forth, if I at least reached celibacy, which I now have, and I'm.
I wonder what the justification is for banning conversion therapy.
Well, conversion therapy is one of the first things that they tried the campaign of misinformation about. And all the strategies they used on conversion therapy were resurrected for Trump. Conversion therapy became a dirty phrase in the first explosion of political correctness, right? In the 80s and 90s. There was a little kind of brief conflagration in culture of political correctness, and it was quickly put down. They tried too much too soon, and it kind of went away again. In the 2000s, everyone was happy again. Then it came back with a vengeance, and it won. But they were already doing it, decades ago, and they did it with conversion therapy. Almost everything you think about it is wrong. Is encouraging homosexuality. America's primary export now has got to be sodomy. The aid they sent to Guatemala last month had $30,000 ring-fenced. You can only get the aid if you have a gay pride parade. America literally exports sodomy to the rest of the world, and it's not a path to happiness. It doesn't make people. It doesn't do any of the things that you think it's going to do for you, and it's not a. It's not. My first approach to it was I was going to try to live as close to, a model, faithful heterosexual relationship as possible. Like I'll get as close as I can, but good as a famous guy once said, a good fruit doesn't grow on poison trees. So, you can't create a simulacrum of virtue from something profoundly ugly and disordered. Indeed, that proved to be the case because I tried to do it. I had the wedding, and then I just almost from the day just had this creeping, nagging, ever blossoming conviction that I was living as this was not what I was here for.
So let me ask you: you're saying you're celibate? Is that what you said?
Yes. So it's remarkably liberating. So are you being victim to your sexual appetites?
But to clarify, are you saying that you still feel attraction towards men, but you're choosing to not act on it?
Yes, that's as far as I've got. That's as far as most people do get.
I bring it up because the media tried to portray it as all of a sudden you came out saying like you were dating women and things like that.
No, and I never said that, but that's obviously the characterization. Which whatever.
If you would date a woman, which woman would you date?
Salma Hayek.
There we go.
Or somebody in that category.
Nancy Pelosi's got big knockers, right?
Oh, you stop it. That's the cryptic.
She's also no longer alive.
Like 10 years.
Who's the other one? Basically, I like Latinas. I think. I don't have the same taste in women that I did in men, interestingly. But then you've met black women, so
Hey, Milo, when you were talking earlier about how you kind of like to provoke a little bit, like you get a joy, a certain sense of joy.
That's a horrible allegation that I'd like you to apologize
for. Get it, like
for.
it. Okay, thanks. But how do you wrestle with and kind of getting enjoyment out of seeing, I don't know, not other people suffering, but like, doing what you're doing, getting the joy out of like poking and stuff with Christianity?
It's a good question. I think justice is supposed to feel good. Justice delivered is supposed to feel good. And Christian love is not like the love on television. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It doesn't mean indulging people in the ways they're killing themselves. It doesn't mean turning a blind eye to your brother when he's your brother in Christ when he's headed for ruin. Christian love is as often about saying no as it is saying yes, because when you care about somebody and you see them hurting themselves, you intervene. Love doesn't enable self-destructive habits. It intervenes and seeks to help to resolve them, and that's a more difficult, it's a trickier kind of love, because it's easy to say yes to everything, especially when you love somebody and you just want them to be happy. It's easy to say, sure, do whatever you want, but that kind of radical freedom gets most people into trouble. And when you learn to say no because you know it's what's best, it's a much more difficult proposition. But that's what opens the doorway to virtuous trolling, to provocation for the sake of righteousness and virtue. And I haven't always done a perfect job of balancing those things. It's tricky, and sometimes I maybe go over the top, although I've never really regretted anything I've said, to be honest. I only ever regret not going far enough. I think it's entirely justifiable and makes sense when you understand the nature of Christian love, which most people don't, because the American culture has conflated it with niceness.
Yeah, toxic compassion.
Niceness is a plague.
Definitely, I agree. I went to Catholic school when I was younger. I also went to Lutheran school. I've been raised Presbyterian, so I'm not Catholic, but I know everything about the religion and all the things as well. So it's interesting to hear your perspective.
Everybody comes home eventually. If you want to make it, if you want to hold out and make it deathbed, fair enough. Lots of great men have done the same, but everybody comes home to Rome in the end.
Mm. Also, as a society, I find it very perplexing that you can only make fun of one religion and you can't make fun of all the other ones. Mm. I think that's another thing that
the pointing out the hypocrisy thing and what if the shoe was on the other foot is not working. Like, it's not a persuasive strategy because they don't care about being hypocrites.
Yeah.
Of course.
I find it more instructive to speak in terms of good and evil, of what works and what doesn't, and of cruelty and kindness. When you point out that somebody's behaving in a cruel way, it kind of takes people by surprise because they're so used to this boring, repetitive political discourse. Everyone says the same thing in the same way. Imagine if they said it about white people. It's so boring. Let's just stop. Just take it out of your vocabulary. It's not achieving anything. Even the people who agree with you are bored by it. Say instead, this is an act of malevolence that is hurting somebody else. When we know they put Biden in office knowing that he was mentally deteriorating, knowing that this would probably shorten his life. And when I watch him on television occasionally, I'm struck with the cruelty of that.
Right.
I feel for him a little bit. As he's reaching for words, and I also recognize those little outbursts of fury that he has as the classic signs of early onset dementia or Alzheimer's. It's unmistakable to anybody who has had somebody who's lost somebody to one of those fates.
Yeah, it's cruel.
It's unmistakable. The guy's losing it.
Yes.
And they put him in anyway, knowing that. And so I feel for him. I feel especially for my beautiful retard, my Down syndrome Uncle Fester in Pennsylvania, because he's so ostentatiously unqualified.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't trust him to shove trolleys around a car park. If we were in the Middle Ages, he'd be in a bell tower. So he didn't frighten children, or prompt cardiac arrest in the elderly or the vaccinated. But
especially the vaccinated.
Yeah, see, I'm much funnier without the rules.
Oh yeah,
you're crazy. But
you can say that he kind of lives in a bell tower. Have you seen video of him in his house? It's like so much echoing flat wood floors right near a steel mill.
He's like a character from children's literature, and I think to myself, how could anybody be mean to someone who looks like that? Imagine what his life has been like.
He's like literally
he's
the Hunchback of
so
Notre Dame.
ugly, ugly in in a Hans Christian Andersen kind of. He's the kind of ugly that drives people to genocide. He's the kind of ugly that curses bloodlines. He's the kind of ugly who could have been wrecked by it, and instead he's just a sweet old retard. And he doesn't really understand what's going on around him. He doesn't know if he's alive or dead. He has no idea if he supports abortion or not. He has no clue what he believes in. But I just like him, and I can't help it, and I don't even know why. But I was watching him in the debate, and I was like, I'd vote. I'm not going to lie, I'd vote for him. Compare and contrast with the chilly, uncanny valley, alien otherworldliness of Dr. Hollyweird. Who can't reliably remember to live stream from the right mansion. The Republican Party fields a former football star with an endless list of allegations of domestic abuse and forcing women to get abortions, and they run him in Georgia, of all places. A sinister TV doctor who was one of the first proponents of transgender surgery for minors
10 years ago,
which is the one thing that actually gets people to say, "Yo, hold up!" Right? It's the minor stuff. It's the only thing that's worked is what about children? And people do start to reconsider. The Tavistock Centre in the UK is now closed.
Right,
the UK no longer performs transgender surgery on minors. Of course, here it'll only get worse and.
But we could have had Kathy Burnett in Pennsylvania if it wasn't for Trump, though.
Stop. They run this guy, and then they run, the AIDS vampire in Arizona. These people are creepy,
Masters,
weird. Yeah, oh god, he looks like an AIDS vampire. Creepy, weird aliens, and they wonder why they don't have the midterm results. And then those creepy, weird aliens, they pull the rug out from them at the last minute anyway. Right. This is a party that has forgotten how to talk like human beings. They've forgotten how to sound like human beings, how to relate to human beings, because they think everybody is like them, and they think everybody interprets the world on the basis of policy, personal advantage, and all the rest of it. No, sometimes we vote for people because we fucking like the guy. Chris Christie had this for a long time. That crackhead Toronto mayor had it. Terrible at his job. Is it Rob something?
Rob Ford.
Yeah,
Rob Ford, yeah.
He was beloved despite his challenges.
True.
Because he was a nice guy. And he would, I heard a thing about him, every morning he would individually call everybody back who had sent in emails or letters to the mayor's office.
Wow.
He called them all every day and talked to them.
Wow.
And it could not be more popular. Sometimes
He just loved crack,
Yeah.
Sometimes we overlook, I suppose, when we're operating in the female mode, we overlook everything about the person, all rhyme, reason, and sense, and we just vote the guy in anyway, because it's one of those inexorable moments in history where there's just no alternative. There's no other option, and when Trump is in a primary against a fat lesbian he's been these lesbians who dressed up as him for Halloween, I swear to God, they just got clothes out their own wardrobes. No. You could tell that's just how you dress, isn't it, love? A picture of him with the fat thighs, in the jeans with the girl boots. The guy's been a phenomenal governor of Florida, but he is out of his mind if he thinks he has any hope of going up against Trump. And I think it would be a great loss to Florida and might imperil the last bastion of freedom if he were to bomb out and the place goes Democrat. I'd have to move my conversion therapy clinic for one thing.
Do you think that he would run under ticket with Trump? Do you think that'd be a good option if you ran with him?
Absolutely not. Neither of them would do that.
Interesting, yeah. I guess you're right there.
A lot of ego, a lot of pride there, too.
Do you like him separate from Trump, just as a guy?
I like him as governor. And I think that everything in its right place. He doesn't have what it takes to be president. He's too easily bought. He has shown us clearly in explicit and implicit ways that he is happy to be bought and sold. I'm not confident in that person's ability to upend the system when it's the system funding him. And what I said earlier, if Meghan McCain's on your side, you're on the wrong side.
What do you think about Lauren Boebert losing? She's 67 points votes down right now.
Honestly, I love to see derivative skanks tossed out, and she is one of those people who rips off everyone around her and then acts horribly to them because she is kind of
wow.
When you kind of these people who are just lifelong imitators and they just kind of imitate the real deal. They're not really pieces on the board, but they're basically fangirls. But then they kind of have this weird shame behavior where they kind of resent the person that they're ripping off and they start to attack them because they suddenly think they're all that. She gave a quote to the press that was very disobliging about another Georgia politician, and I just thought, how fucking dare you? Who are you? Who are you? You're a former prostitute, as best we can tell, who emerged from a weird Israeli talent agency out of nowhere. And what are you? You are dumb as a box of bricks, as Bannon said about Ivanka. She's just no precious or redeeming qualities of any kind, as far as I can see. Exactly the reason that people think Republican politicians are idiotic and disposable. She's not a piece on the board. So what happens to her ultimately is unimportant. Yep. But I do like to see imposters return to their rightful.
Just really quick, I just want to ask about that. What do you think about Democratic establishment politicians also funneling a lot of monies into some of the more MAGA candidates, and then Trump also putting forward Oz and Masters, the Dracula-like
John Gibbs?
Dude.
You see, poor John Gibbs. he runs on a platform of empowering black people to free themselves from the welfare state, and he ends up being the greatest recipient of Democrat largesse in history. Personally receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Democrat establishment.
Who is he for the people who don't? No?
So John Gibbs was running in Michigan. He did not succeed in his run for Congress, but he was giving speeches about how he wanted to free blacks from the dependence on the welfare state and all the rest of it, and then the Democrats go and donate $400, making him one of the greatest recipients of the Democrat largesse. Phenomenal joke. They're much better at that than our side, because I suppose it's easy when you don't have to worry about being malicious. When it doesn't bother you, if you're indulging in your darker tendencies, I guess it's easier to land the moment or whatever. I just I wonder, what does a person who's just starting out, like a young, naive, well-intentioned leftist, think when they realize who their voting base is? Like the people that the bread and butter that you have to appeal to is mentally ill spinsters, on massive amounts of drugs, who regret everything about their life and hate everyone they know. And your shock troops are like crazy trannies. Does that make any of them like stop and rethink, maybe like, guys, I don't know if we're on the side of righteousness after all. Maybe we're not the good guys. But none of them seem to be troubled by it. So when they continue in this career in Democrat politics, I think it's a given that they're comfortable with indulging their darker impulses. And those of us who have more of a complicated moral quandary about the way that we address other people, I guess our hands are tied behind our back. But this is precisely why the American system is so stupid. It's the First Amendment is a invitation to bully Christians out of public life. If Christians become the minority, they lose by default, because there are certain things that we can't do. We can't fight fire with the full extent of the fire that we get in the public square. We just can't do it. We can't knowingly and maliciously lie about people, and that's one of their primary avenues of attack. They say things that are categorically and wretchedly untrue about us. And for people who really believe in the actual, literal, supernatural existence of heaven and hell, nothing that happens here is worth threatening your immortal soul. So you can't respond in kind with a clean conscience. You might do a calculus and on one or two occasions, give yourself a pass, but you still did it. You still got to confess for it. It's still, it's not the way that we're supposed to behave. Because ultimately, what happens here is not our ultimate purpose.
Let's get into one last one. Where do you think we're headed for the next couple of years, and what happens in 2024?
I think America is definitely reaching the end of the line. We know from history, going back to Babylonia, when these big empires fall, they fall really, really quickly, like shockingly fast. Rome did,
What's fast though?
Well, like within a generation, a continent-spanning empire is gone. Its buildings are in ruins, and someone else is in charge. Yeah. And this is, Douglas Murray, the British writer, has this phrase he used to use. We're going to be arguing about transgender pronouns when the mullahs nuke us. What he's getting at is sort of late decadent periods of corrupt empires. Get completely distracted with trivia and forget how to protect themselves, and then get taken by surprise in humiliating ways. You got the Visigoths sacking Rome. Is just unthinkable. Just a few years before, and this is also so. One of the most interesting things that Putin said about America is that arrogant empires, especially in unipolar contexts, make lots of little mistakes because they know they can, and they get complacent about their missteps. And what they don't realize, because there's no kind of cultural or institutional memory, and the people are different every few years who are in charge of it, right? Which is because they don't have monarchies, which is a mistake. When you can have different prime ministers if you got the same queen, because they go to her for advice every week, and she can say, well, what Margaret Thatcher discovered was, and you have that wisdom, passed down institutionally. When you have a different president, more than every decade, there's no way that the country can remember all the stuff that it's got wrong. Right. And these little paper cuts eventually produce collapse, because they they produce rotten foundations. And the way that complacent, arrogant countries like America die is they have no way to track or understand the extent of the damage from all these little mistakes, like pissing off this country by invading here, devaluing confidence in their own currency from doing this. Ukraine is a series of mistakes. Vaccine, series of mistakes. And all these little injuries, none of them are individually enough to imperil the republic, but they do add up. And these nations that are hooked on democracy have no way of remembering what they've done, and therefore they die.
And with that, I think we'll wrap it up there. Milo's been
on that uplifting note.
On that uplifting note, I think it was a good definitive note, and it should be a good
I'm buying
one.
a castle in Hungary. So
are you really?
I'll be watching you all murdering each other from
the high castle
from a 14th century building in the only Catholic country left in the world.
first
sounds good.
Statement was awesome.
Poland is also good too. I'm Polish, and there's a lot of Catholic people there.
So. Yes. Poland's good. I find it a little bit. I don't know. I find it sort of. Maybe because I'm British, I just find it sort of a little hostile. The atmosphere is a little hostile. It's kind of a confrontation.
Budapest is beautiful, though.
Yeah,
I fell in love with Budapest.
Yeah.
My little chateau situation is going to be about 2 hours away from there. Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about the castle when the world's ending.
You will be invited to the end of the world party.
Sounds good.
Trust and believe. You won't be able to get a plane, but you'll be invited. We'll Skype you in.
Yeah, sounds great.
We'll Skype you in.
Thanks for hanging out, man. It's been a blast.
Me.
And for everybody who's a member making it possible, thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.